Are you constantly on the edge of your seat waiting for the end to happen with Jesus coming back on the clouds? Wait no further. The real lamb who's worthy of unraveling the scrolls is right here with you now. We are MythVision. Joe Whipp is 100% correct. At any millennium now, Jesus will come back. I have a special guest with us today. I have Robert Connor joining us again. The last time we had him on, we talked about the insanity of Paul and ghost apparitions with Jesus. So welcome back, Mr. Connor. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me back.
Thank you. This is a subject that I not only know too well, but I love, because this is one of the little Achilles heel issues that led me out of Christianity. And if you take it seriously, and if you're honest in your approach, you will inevitably find the failure and the problem. It is there. There is no way of escaping it. So the book you have recently published, The Jesus Cult, 2,000 Years of the Last Days. This is a fantastic read. I'm going to give a quick little shameless plug for you. All right. I really, really seriously hope that people will go check it out. John Loftus has a meaty, powerful foreword to this book, and this book really gets to the heart of it. I'm going to read a quote real quick here, and then I'd love to get your comments about the book. This is our little plug moment. Then we're going to dive into the content. Experience has shown that radical disconfirmation often has little effect on cult members. Some may be pilled away by dramatically failed predictions, revelations of financial fraud, or blatant moral hypocrisy. But even irrefutable evidence of criminality will often cause true believers to simply dig in. Although several egregious examples will be mentioned, this book is not a catalog of the horrors of religious cults. News of fraud, child abuse and neglect, and serial sexual predation in Christian churches makes the headlines on a weekly basis. Neither is this book primarily a refutation of Christian theological assertions. Instead, this work defends the claim that Christianity was a cult, as presently understood from its inception, a toxic brew of apocalyptic delusion, sexual phobias and fixations, and a hierarchy of control of women by men, of slaves by masters, and society by the church. Christianity's irrational and antisocial nature was fully documented by Roman writers familiar with the early Jesus cult, and its destructive features, intrinsic to biblical Christianity, remain a clear and present danger. However, the greatest threat is the core feature of the Christian cult: belief in belief. The conviction that the Christian narrative is literally its own proof. I love that. I love that. I love that. Right to the core. Tell us about the book, if you don't mind, Robert, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Well, the book is divided into sections. It's unfortunately, from one standpoint, a shotgun approach. The first part is that you quoted from is a discussion of cult mind. And that's the thread that connects the entire book. And we will get into this cult mind, hopefully. Then, as you note, it takes up the question of the Parousia, the second coming, whatever you want to call it, the rapture, and the early reaction to that. Then it moves into the resurrection stories, which are literally the only proof of Jesus' resurrection are these contradictory and basically kind of weird stories. Then it moves into Jesus' mindset. Because the Jesus that is typically presented from the church's standpoint is a very sanitized Savior. The quotations are quite selective because there's some other stuff in there, as my friend David Madison has documented extensively, that make you step back and say, whoa, what?
Yeah, in his book, 10 Things Christians Wish Jesus Never Taught, actually, I think overlaps with some of this issue that you're bringing up. So please get the book, everybody. I mean, we're about to dive into this material. I really wanted to plug Connor here, and we're going to actually get into this at the end. Shameless plugs. You know, those who follow us here at MythVision, it's not a shame. We're not ashamed to promote this stuff. We love promoting our guest here. So, Robert Connor, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, you can join our Patreon if you want true salvation, not the fake stuff the religions sell you. And then also we have mini courses. You can go sign up right now. We have mini courses on the way. There's a course right now on ancient Greek mysteries, and I've done a bunch with Bart Ehrman that are down in the chat. And oftentimes it's jabbing directly at apologetics. So get yourself schooled up, educate yourself, and be prepared in a crazy world we live in. Vaguely Agnostic, thank you for becoming a member. I really appreciate that. We're going to get to your super chats here in just a bit, but let's dive into the material first. So, Robert, I am like a huge fan of this topic because I was a Christian, like a very serious, I know like you could say this and people listening are just listening. And the impact of what I'm trying to say, I wish I could really give it to them and how serious of a nut job I was. And I mean that. I was obsessed. I really thought I was going to be alive when Jesus came back. The house church I was at, we spoke in tongues. We were casting out demons, rolling on the ground, listening to worship music, King James onlyist. I had a female pastor that was prophesying, saying that Jesus told her that she would be alive before he came back. Like she wasn't going to die.
Right.
She's long gone. She's been gone almost about 8 to 10 years now. And I had dreams about the second coming. One was lightning bolt struck and was sucking me up. And I looked at all these lightning bolts across the sky and all these humans that were floating up to heaven. Another one was fire came down and scorched the earth, literally the whole planet. And I woke up and I was taken into this other place. And I was telling my wife this years later of my obsessive harassment of Christianity upon her. She had dreams that I was taken and she was left behind because I was so righteous and good and had the Holy Spirit and I was in Christ and she wasn't. So I wanted to paint a picture of how serious this topic is. How do you want to begin it?
Well, like many people, I have wondered for a long, long time because I wasn't quite as into it as you were. But the second coming, Armageddon, all that happy stuff was a very big part of the religion that I was in. And we talked about this, touched on this before, but whenever you would have a question, the leaders would say, well, you have to be able to go back and read the original Greek. And if you read it in the original Greek, then you can probably understand it. And they used what I call the original Greek tarot card. And so I said, okay, sure. Sure, I'll call a bluff. I enrolled in a state university and started studying the original Greek, and I hawked down on it. And I was way ahead of most other people because I was more consumed and more serious about it. And at the same time, while I was doing that for a year and a half of studying Greek, I also ran across Schweitzer's Quest of the Historical Jesus. And I read that and I thought, he's got a point. The New Testament really does say that. It says that and not that other stuff that apologists are always coming in and filling up the potholes and explaining it, or as I call it, Jesus-explanation. Yeah, he said, Jesus, this is what Jesus is attributed to, or quoted as saying. Let's just take it at face value and see what we come up with. And I'm going, yeah. And then if you go and you go back and you read Paul, yes, that's the major link between Paul and the Gospels, is this belief in the immediate second coming, and these people expected to live to see it. They really thought they were going to be alive to witness this. And then when people started dying, they're going like jazz hands. It's like, whoa, wait, what's going on? And that was the incentive for Paul to write what is probably his first letter, First Thessalonians. And he's just telling them, okay, no, calm down, calm down. The dead in Christ will, come up out of their graves to meet the Lord in the air, along with the rest of us. And I'm thinking, oh, wow. And how, in this book, I say, okay, imagine now 2,000 years have passed and billions of dead Christians, and Jesus comes back, and all those billions of people are come shooting up out of the graves like, horses out of the starting gate at the Kentucky Derby.
You actually spend a little bit of time for our audience to understand that, briefly mentioning how these are physical bodies. That the idea is that their bodies are literally going to come out of the grave.
You're going to have a body, and it's going to come out of the grave. And it's like, okay, wow. And you thought, zombie movies were were off the rails. But yes, coming back to your point, you look at that and you think, okay, how did I believe that? How do people continue to believe this stuff? And I have been thinking about that for a long time, and I finally just reduced it to belief in belief. Let me explain that to you, because I can give you some other examples that are not strictly religious, and you go, oh, yeah, that's right. If you believe it, it's true. That's all you need to do is believe it. You would say, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. Turn that around 180. You'll see it when you believe it. Once you believe it, you'll see it. It'll be clear. QAnon. Do you believe it? Then it's true. Stolen elections. If you believe it, it's true. Bill Gates is putting microchips in you through COVID vaccinations. Any evidence? Not really, but if you believe it, it's true. It gets a little weirder. You can believe two things that are diametrically opposite, but if you believe them, then they're still true, both of them. Mm-hmm. If you believe you understand something, then you understand it. So if you're a preacher that went to some Bible college, but you believe you understand evolution, voila, you understand it. If you believe you understand virology, even though you dropped out of high school, yeah, you believe it.
This reminds me of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yes.
Like, so it plays some role, like it puts you one up with that confidence, but you're really ignorant and you're not really factually or looking at the evidence for what it really is. In your book, you actually show statistics in American thought. Yes. And if I could, just to mention this, failed prophecies aside, a Pew Research poll done in 2010 found that by 2050, 41% of Americans believe that Jesus Christ, here we are with the belief again, that Jesus Christ definitely, 23% or probably 18% will have returned to earth. And then you go on, Fully 58% of white evangelical Christians say Christ will return to earth in this period, by far the highest percent in any religious group. 1 in 5 religiously unaffiliated Americans also see Christ returning during the next 4 decades. Americans with no college experience, 59%, are much more likely than those with some college experience, 35%, or college graduates, 19%, to expect Jesus Christ's return. By region, those in the South, 52%, are more likely to predict a second coming by 2050. Just to show statistics, like,
Yes,
America is still like living off of this
it's
dream.
it's Dunning-Kruger not only on steroids but also on stilts. Okay, it's like, yeah, yes, the Dunning-Kruger that destroyed Los Angeles in that movie. Yeah, it's like the Godzilla of Dunning-Kruger. And now everybody has heard this thing ad nauseum, that truth, knowledge is power, right? Knowledge is power. Okay, that's true. Ignorance is also power. And think about that for a while. Because yeah, ignorance is power, which is why, in 1925, after the biblical literates got their clock cleaned in the famous, creation versus evolution trial down there in Tennessee. And newspapers around the country were publishing cartoons about how dumb these people were. What they did was start their own little separate world of Bible colleges, publishing houses, radio shows, and what have you. So the lesson that they took away from that was that we will just pull back from the rest of society and we will cultivate our ignorance. Because they discovered that no, they could not go out in the public, even back in the 1920s. They could not compete with information. They could not compete with knowledge. So they said, okay, we can't do that, yet we're not going to give up. So we're going to pull back and create our own little parallel world, our little multiverse, where we can live and we can celebrate being ourselves and not be challenged. And we don't want our children dancing. We don't want our children, listening to this, black music that's starting up and jazz and all the rest of this stuff, because we don't want them to be contaminated. And also at that time, interestingly enough, they avoided politics. Evangelicals didn't want very much to do with politics because they recognized it was a dirty business. They didn't want to know how you made the sausage. And eventually they came around, especially during the 70s and 80s, they began to come around. Their viewpoint changed, and then they started getting into it. And then once they got into it and they got some power and got some influence, they discovered they really liked it. Mm. But this whole idea that you could have, like, I think you would agree that you were basically delusional. Mm-hmm. You were, for all practical purposes, functionally nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but religion is the prototype for that. It always has been. It's the template for believing something without any evidence. And the thing that a lot of Christians fail to really appreciate is that, for example, the New Testament stories about Jesus' resurrection are literally the only evidence for Jesus' resurrection. There were no contemporary historical figures, verifiably historical figures, who believed or saw any of this stuff. And the stories about the resurrection, if you read them side to side, you're going like, okay, wait a minute. That makes no narrative sense. It makes no psychological sense. If you place yourself back into that situation, you're thinking, that's not what I would have done. You know, if Jesus had told you over and over and over again, he's going to Jerusalem, he's going to be arrested, he's going to be executed, but then 3 days later, he's coming back, what would you have done?
After seeing everything he supposedly already did,
Yeah.
I would think I'd be convinced that he's coming back.
And you'd be waiting.
You'd be waiting. You wouldn't run off in fear and be like, you can't, there's no way he's back. It's like, bro, he's been saying it the whole time.
Right.
Common sense. Yeah.
You wouldn't be doubting. You would be there at the tomb waiting to see Jesus come out of that tomb. I mean, hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people would have gathered there waiting. Just like, you know, those Seventh-day Adventists that went out and stood on the hillsides waiting for the second coming, and it didn't happen. And yeah, it's just hard to get your head around how people can defend that as being historical when it breaks the narrative rule. The Gospels have been building up to this miracle, this great miracle, the biggest thing that happened since Jehovah created the world. And then what? Nobody shows up. They go fishing. Peter goes fishing. And you're going like, what? Whoa.
Yeah.
How does that? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. If I can read another quote from your book, by the way, please get it's, by the way, it's not a huge book. It's really not. It's fun. It's straight to the point. I mean, you're barely scratching over 100 pages, literally. And it's not big. The font is not enormous. This is a really interesting quote. And then maybe we can get into some of the pericope and paint a picture. So the Roman philosopher Porphyry of Tyre declared, and there is more to Paul's lying. He very clearly says, we who are alive, for it is now 300 years since he said this, and nobody, not Paul and not anyone else, has been caught up in the air. End of quotation. Porphyry knew over 15 centuries ago that Jesus of Nazareth was a handful of dust and his kingdom an empty sack. Now, there's something, and I love the title. How do I put this? What do you call an author who just like cuts through all this extra unnecessary like fluff and just gets straight to the point over and over and over through this book? What do you call that? What do you call that?
Well, we talked about this just a little bit before the show started. We call it snarkasm. You know, it's like, since you bring that up, I think the average person, and probably a lot of people who are above average, people who have actually spent decades and decades studying the New Testament professionally, do not appreciate how little information we have about early Christianity. I mean, if you think about it, even for a little while, it's amazing. Okay, by the end of the first century, the guesstimate is among authorities on it that at least a dozen, maybe as many as 20 different gospels were in circulation. We know that those gospels were either named in later writings, or we have, in some case, like the Gospel of Judas, we have the Coptic version of what was originally a Greek gospel. We know from Paul's letters that there were people in his congregations who did not believe in the resurrection. He starts off 1 Corinthians chapter 15 asking, how can some of you say there is no resurrection of the dead? It's like, what? I thought that was pretty, basic brick and mortar Christian theology that Jesus rose from the dead. But there were people in Paul's house churches who apparently did not believe that. Now, what did Paul mean by how can you say there is no resurrection? He doesn't explain what they thought. He just leaves it at that. Did they think that maybe resurrection was spiritual as opposed to Paul's version of it? We don't know. We have no idea. We have about 7 widely considered genuine letters from the Apostle Paul, but we don't have Paul sitting down anywhere and laying out systematically what his theology was.
Mm-hmm.
So I compared it and say, okay, let's say that you knew nothing about Christianity and you were plunked down in a church and you listened to a guy give 7 sermons. And then from those sermons, you try to take those sermons and extrapolate what he believes about everything from that very, very tiny amount of evidence. And that's kind of where you are with Paul.
Right.
I mean, he very rarely breaks down exactly what it is he's talking about. If you look at the Gospels, it looks kind of like the original belief was that Jesus was the Messiah. The Messiah is supposed to come back, kick ass, take names, and reestablish Jewish rule along the lines of David over the Promised Land.
Like Schweitzer, I mean, literally what
Yeah.
Schweitzer saying, and I'm with you, by the way. I just went and did a visit to Paula Fredrickson, and I asked her who were the most impactful academics that you've ever, encountered, and Schweitzer was the top.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And she literally makes this point. What's funny about your book that I've been reading with Paula Fredrickson's works as well, and just to keep plugging it, you mention from its outset the earliest kernel that we can find of Christianity that we have any evidence of is staunch apocalypticism. It is literally in its veins. Yeah. It's the spine that starts to snap that they have to take out of the body of Christianity over time, but there's still versions of it that are floating around where people still have that spine there. And they're already trying to make it realized or make it fulfilled in some way or push off the date, make time not mean what time is and stuff like that. So Paul is our earliest guy. And she says, Paul's late. Now get this picture in your head, right? She says, when Paul's writing this, Paul is already kind of late to the party of the expectation that Christ is supposed to come back.
Yeah.
Christians aren't even really paying attention to that. And I didn't even think about it till I recently discussed this with her. She's like, yeah, Derek, Paul is late. He's 20, 30 years later. And I'm going, I never thought about this. Wow.
Well, it's
jeez.
Okay, you opened this door. I saw on some news aggregator a couple of days ago some whack job preacher somewhere says that hurricane hit Florida as revenge from Satan because Florida passed the Don't Say Gay bill, and that got Satan pissed off, and so he sent a hurricane to hit Florida in punishment for them passing the Don't Say Gay bill. So, I've already mentioned that you could have 2 diametrically opposed things in your mind and believe both of them and they're both true because you believe them. So God sends hurricanes to punish people. So I think it was Pat Robertson or somebody said that, New Orleans had a gay pride parade, and he said, see, New Orleans is going to get wiped out by a hurricane. Then Florida passes a bill that Satan doesn't like. So Satan hits them with a hurricane. So God couldn't stop Satan from hitting Florida with a hurricane. That was my first impression about that. Is like, it's, you can take any set of circumstances, anything that you want, and if you believe something, it can be true and it can make perfect sense to you as long as you believe it. It can contradict this thing that you said last week, but as long as you believe it, it's all true, and you don't question the logic of it. And that's kind of where I see the whole country going. Well, not the whole country. I mean, let's not terribilize it, but
So
a good section of the country is thinking this way. And like I mentioned before, religious belief is the prototype for that. It's all just religious belief. It's the template for it, and we just apply it to politics, or we apply it to science, or we apply it to family, or whatever. And you believe it? Oh, we're good. We're good. As long as you believe it, you got it.
it sounds like you're finding the recipe behind it. Like we can talk about the details, get into the pericope, talk about how we know the soon near, they all expected the end, Jesus coming, all of that, the apocalypticism.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like what you're trying to do is say, look, that's great, and we're going to cover that. We're going to talk about that. But I want to talk about this thing that I'm calling belief in belief, because
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the recipe for the conclusions that we're finding. And we need to find a way somehow to build better methodology or critical thinking skills in people so that they aren't just believing in belief and then therefore convinced. Because it's like the magic. It's almost like you ever seen the commercial? They're doing like beer commercials and the guy's looking and the girl's like super, super pretty in the corner. And he's like, yeah. And he's been drinking. And then his buddy's like, hold on, bro. And he puts the two fingers up. And he goes, watch this. And he goes like that. And he starts going, see? And the guy's like, and then she went from a 10 to a 2. And it's like, oh, I can see it now. And like the point is like they're putting on the drunk goggles by belief in belief and not really paying attention to what's really going on, what the text says, what the actual case is.
Mm-hmm. I think that John Loftus touches on this in his introduction. The problem with belief in belief, that sounds so reductionist, and it sounds so simplistic that you're going like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, come on. It's got to be more detailed than that. It's got to be deeper than that. Well, yeah, it is kind of. But it's like you mentioned, I've been trying for years to cut to the chase and get to what exactly is this? And as John points out, we are a product of evolution. The human brain doesn't just spring into existence. It's got little additions to it and little adaptations over millions of years until finally, a couple 100,000 years ago, recognizably human consciousness jumps into language, representation, what have you. But the brain was not designed to be analytical. It's designed to look for quick answers. It's not designed to understand numbers. It's not designed particularly to understand probability. I mean, you think about the gospel writers. The gospel writers apparently seriously believed, that you could count the generations between Jesus and the Garden of Eden. That is, they did not understand time. the whole concept of deep time, of what we call geologic time, no way. They couldn't comprehend that. If you had dropped these people into a city like modern day Los Angeles, Los Angeles County alone has got 10 million people in it. If you had dropped these people into Los Angeles County, they would have just died. There's no way
they
they
would have found their way into like a padded room by saying the things that they, would have
Yeah.
probably believed.
I mean, there's no way that they could conceive of that. You talk about 93 million miles to the sun. It's like they thought the sun was just up above the clouds. Their whole concept of the world was small, to the point of delusionally small. They thought Jesus is going to come back on the clouds because that's about as far up as it goes. I mean, the whole world that these people are living in is completely strange to us. If you think about it, it's like it's incomprehensibly small. So, Jesus coming right back. What if you had gone back in time and told him, oh no, 2,000 years from now, he will still not be here? And they'd look at you and think, what's 2,000? What does that even?
Then,
yeah.
I mean, I think they would be like, "Are you kidding me? No, he's coming back," and they wouldn't even believe you, even if you were like zapped and appeared out of nowhere. Their cognitive dissonance may have had them say, "No, that's not true. He's coming back soon, and we know this is going to happen." I can't imagine them not doing it until what the expectation was this generation. When that card trick stopped working as much, you get Second Peter, and in your book you talk about how this Second Peter passage is late first century. It could be early second, in my opinion. I know you're quoting one of the people who talk about this in your book, but to me, that's a huge red flag. I mean, all things have remained the same since our fathers went to sleep. In 2 Peter 3, scoffers and mockers in the last days. And I actually, the cognitive dissonance on me, Robert, worked in a different way. I didn't go the route of like time can be anything. At first, as a futurist Christian, and meaning a futurist, I mean that I was still expecting in the future Jesus to come. It became evident to me when Jesus' words that were put in his mouth in the Gospels, when Paul was saying, we who are alive, when the book of Revelation talks about the things which must soon take place, melo in Greek, when it talks about come Lord quickly, he will not tarry, all of these things over and over and over, I went, Jesus is about to come back in their day because it's in their book and it's written to their churches and it's written to their people. And I thought, maybe he did come back. So I started to make words change, like heaven and earth stopped meaning heaven and earth. It meant like covenant with the people, or you find ways to make the words stop meaning what they mean, so that he did come back and you save the Savior.
Yeah. So if you believe the meaning of the word is something different, then the whole dictionary just changed.
That's what happened. Yep.
Yeah.
The whole dictionary
because
changed.
You believed it. You believed it changed, and therefore it doesn't mean that anymore.
Exactly.
What it really means. And then we go, and then you find these people going to sane individuals and going, no. It doesn't mean what it meant the last 6,000 years. It means this new thing that agrees with my belief.
Right. Because Jesus couldn't fail, right? Like we obviously humans, I would even quote the passage where it's like, all men are liars. God is going to tell the truth, and Jesus is God in the flesh. So he can't be wrong. I believe it. Believe. We keep coming back to that. Let's get some of these super chat questions, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Constellation Pegasus, thank you for the super chat. I suppose Jesus was a false prophet. The kingdom coming in one generation. That failed?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And that's the problem. That is actually what I've called the flywheel of theology. this prophecy of Paul and Jesus fails. I mean, there's absolutely no question about it. All these people died. Even though they were raising this objection, it's like, wait a minute, things are going on just like they always have, and here we are dying. Like you point out, that card stopped working. That wasn't an ace in the hole anymore. And at that point, theology begins to shift, and the Christians begin doing what the pagans would have automatically done, and that is Jesus becomes a god. Jesus isn't just this wise person. He's not just the Messiah. He's actually God. And then you begin seeing this development until finally at Nicaea, they say, yeah, Jesus is God. Yeah, he's God. He's along with the Father and the Holy Spirit. They're all God. Jesus is divine. And in the first verse of the Gospel of John, Jesus is now pre-existent. He was always there from the beginning.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So why he waited all those thousands of years to show up and save humanity, I mean, he didn't save Sodom and Gomorrah. He didn't save the people of the flood. Apparently they didn't qualify for some reason, but he shows up finally after all this time, after all these prophets and all these wars and death and destruction and famine and everything else. He shows up to save humanity. But anyway, he was always there. He was there from deep time as they understood it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that I point out there very briefly, is that is why that mainstream churches, the Orthodox churches, bracket off the second coming. They have all these glorious paintings in cathedrals of, Jesus sitting on the throne, the clouds, angels, yada, yada. But they don't really get into it when that's going to happen. They recognize that, but it's become iconography, not prophecy.
Right. They stop anticipating.
Yes.
Constellations back again. He says the Bible has more power than any government or tax codes, which makes it dangerous. Jehovah's Witnesses are an example of why it needs to go away.
Yeah. Yes.
And Constellation was an ex-Jehovah's Witness. He also has another one here. Does the church deliberately lie to its members? Has anyone here, and that includes Derek, ever hear a pastor in the church say that Mark chapter 16, 9 through 20 are proven forgeries? I've never heard it. Didn't have a clue until 2 years ago. It's disgusting.
That's a good
chat.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's an excellent question because, okay, if you go to mainstream biblical studies and you start reading mainstream biblical studies, virtually no one, even in the ministry, in a lot of mainstream churches, virtually no one really believes the virgin birth, da 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 da. You can go down a whole list of things they don't really believe. So the question is, what are they doing there? What are you doing there if it's not true? And if the virgin birth isn't true, then how is the resurrection any different? How is the Holy Spirit any different? So what is religion there for exactly? I mean, how is that consolation to anybody if it's not true? If there are no immortal souls, if Jesus isn't going to come back to raise the dead, because that's how the dead get raised in the New Testament. Jesus is the resurrection and the life, dude. And he's the one that raises you in the last day. So if he's not coming back, then it looks like you're going to stay in the ground for a long, 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 long time. And if that's the case, then what are you doing preaching funerals? What are you telling people exactly? I sat and watched this funeral of Elizabeth II just because God knows nobody does monarchy like the Brits. I mean, they had got this monarchy thing. Man, they got this thing down cold. It took 10 days to get this poor woman buried, you know. And the Archbishop of Canterbury and all these other people are standing up here reading passages from the Bible about the resurrection. And I'm thinking, wow. The camera is panning around over the audience, and I was thinking to myself, is there anybody really in Great Britain anymore that takes that seriously? How many people in that audience believe what is being read out of the Bible? And if they don't believe it, including the people who are reading this stuff from the Bible, if they don't believe it, then why are they reading it? Why are they bothering? Why does anybody build a church anymore? Why does a person go to a school and get a PhD in theology if they don't believe it?
Mm.
And that's a great question. You know, it's like, what's it about? And I get into that actually in, I guess it's section 5, fact-free, tax-free, and above the law. And I think when you read the tax-free part and you read the above the law part, especially, which was kind of difficult to write, quite frankly, you go, oh, okay, right. That's starting to fall in place.
For those who are tuning in right now, this is the book that we are the subject matter that he wrote extensively in this book here is what we're discussing. And I hope to see everybody go down in the description, get a copy of the book. It's free on Kindle Unlimited, but of course you can get the paperback. And anywho, wow, there's a lot here. Let's keep going then. Monkismo, what's your opinion of the argument that Revelations is all about Rome and Bronze Age politics and that it's unfair to read it literally?
Yeah, I'm not really sure that I have heard that one. I think that is a more modern approach to try to explain it. I think that the person who wrote Revelation, whoever that may have been, was probably pretty convinced, you know, that he was writing something that was theologically solid. Revelation and Daniel and books like that are kind of interesting. There was a guy way back in the day named John Allegro. He was a British guy. He studied the Dead Sea Scrolls. He was an archaeologist primarily. And he came up with the idea that the early Christians were basically a mushroom cult.
Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. And people just at the time, they go, oh, that's just ridiculous. That is completely beyond belief. And I saw a thing, oddly enough, about a week ago that Candida Moss posted. Apparently, archaeologists in Israel have found evidence of opioids inside a tomb. And I'm going, dude, really? You're telling me that they came up with this stuff just because they were smoking the good shit?
Well, they found cannabis at one point. Now they found opium. So yeah, there's some stuff going on for sure.
There's some stuff going on here. They're tweaking because that was always to me the most interesting question about New Testament studies was, what were these dudes smoking? And apparently archaeology is going to find the answer. You know, it's like I never suspected T-Rex might have had feathers either, but you know,
Yeah. Well, you know what you're saying here, and this is what I always tell people when we get into that subject and we discuss this idea of people being on some type of narcotic or whatnot. Like even without that, people are delusional enough. Like I
Yes.
wasn't on anything, and I was literally having wild expectations. I was really nutty in my thinking. So just to keep that in the forefront, we caught up on the questions.
Well, that was your problem. You weren't on anything.
That's the problem. Why do you think I'm a recovering drug addict? As soon as I had enough of this nutty stuff, I went back to drugs, and then I realized, damn, this isn't working either. I got to figure out something.
This isn't working any better than that second coming stuff.
Right. I do think there's some overlap between both my addiction to drugs and my obsession in the religion. There's something that was going on. I explained this experience. And in fact, Professor John Wathy, who came on and did a presentation recently, he wrote a book called The Illusion of God's Presence. And he takes a natural evolutionary approach to show why we believe in gods and stuff. And he said, I'm working on something. So he said, I can't tell you anything to spoil it, but I am working on something that is absolutely going to connect drug addiction and that kind of mental illness and the substance abuse and how that affects the brain and religion and like the spiritual experiences and such and how that overlap plays a part. I can't wait to get into that content. Sorry, I had to throw that out.
Well, I mean, you look at how many religions, native religions, employ psychotherapy, you know, like oral psychotherapy or smoking stuff. I mean, you have all these people tripping down to try out ayahuasca or whatever. And who was the guy that wrote The Doors to Perception back in the day? Anyway, yeah, the musical group, The Doors, named themselves after this book, The Doors of Perception. And this writer argued that basically hallucinogenic substances opened the mind to possibilities. And in some cases, that was actually curative. That LSD, for example, as I recall, began its early career as a treatment, not an escape, but an actual treatment, that somebody could take a hallucinogenic substance and step outside of themselves long enough to gain insight as to what was going on. I'm sorry, I can't remember the guy's name that wrote Doors to Perception. It was a long time ago. That was back when, you know, I was only like about 80 or something.
Right. Let's paint a picture. I want to get back into the text. Let's paint a picture, a chronology, if you will. What I know and what you know is probably very similar in our understanding of the text of the New Testament. Paul probably, and I say probably, I like how you did something unique just to show the kind of detail that Robert spends. Robert says, well, they're very certain about 5 of Paul's letters. And then you even add the caveat of like, but there's 2 that like 1st and 2nd Corinthians, I think definitely, you know, probably Paul wrote them. And the reason why I like that, just to make the point of your carefulness, is that it isn't just, yep, this is the deal. Like you can accept consensus and move on. And for the sake of argument, let's just go with consensus here. 7 Pauline letters early. Paula Fredrickson said they're actually late. Now I know I'm throwing early and late here in the same sentence to make my point. The earliest letters we have of Christianity are actually late in the game on this apocalyptic scheme.
Yeah.
And then we get Mark, our first gospel. And in Mark 13 specifically, where it's really climatic of this supposed, like, here are the signs.
Right.
John J. Collins, I just had on recently, said that there seems to be some de-apocalypticism or de-eschatological language here. They're trying to defang.
Yes.
While they're still saying, hey, we're expecting something. It's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. They add little things in Jesus' words like, well, not even the Son of Man actually knows the day or the...
Yes.
Don't say I'm wrong. Don't say I'm wrong because I'm not really certain.
Right.
And
like when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, for example, then you know.
Then you know the time
Then
is
you,
at hand.
yeah,
It's
then you
near.
know when you see, yeah. So
But
they're
even
just
then,
bumping it, yeah, they're bumping it forward.
so while Paul and them are taking multiple steps forward, it's like Mark, according to John J. Collins, is trying to take a step back while keeping his foot forward. He's trying to say like it's coming, but like
yeah,
it isn't here yet, but any moment, just expect it. And then what happens? Matthew and Luke, they pick up on it, but they're not as fervent. Then you get to John, and scholars are looking at it, and they're
gone.
like, it's gone. And guess what? He is the resurrection. And like everything is more realized eschatology. It's spiritual. It is fulfilled. You are the kingdom. You see a hint of this in Luke too, where he talks about you, the body of Christ, are the kingdom of God. But hold on. The Jewish expectation, as Schweitzer and everyone else talks about, isn't what you see in this later gospel tradition,
right?
Which is trying to fix the problem.
Yeah. And that's the here in this day and age, to live to be 70 is nothing. I mean, that's just about average. But in most of human history, if you lived to be 40, you were probably pushing it. So, yeah, I mean, it's like you can only string this along for a certain amount of time before all of those original people died. But then the other thing that Christians conveniently forget about is that there was a war that happened. The Romans invaded Galilee, and they marched south and eventually destroyed Jerusalem in the year 70, and then finally got down to Masada, which was the very last holdout, and destroyed that. I think it's about 80 or CE 73, as I recall. So they were wiping out all of these communities that were there to begin with. There's almost no doubt whatsoever that the original mother church in Jerusalem with James and what have you, that was gone long before the Gospel of Mark shows up. And whatever was still there was definitely gone after the Romans were done with it. They burned Jerusalem down along with the temple and everything else. And it's the original community was dissolved, scattered. A lot of the Jews that were taken prisoner during the Jewish-Roman War ended up quarrying stone for what we call the Colosseum, the Flavian amphitheater that was basically built to celebrate the Flavian dynasty and their victories in Palestine. So all of that substrate that was there, all of that original Christianity stuff, that was being removed, and it was becoming a Gentile religion.
100%. I think that change is obvious as we're looking throughout even Paul's letters. See, Paul, I'm with Paul on this. I think that Paul's thinking of himself as a Jew, and he's a last days Jew who doesn't expect a new religion. He's not here trying to start a church in terms of long term. Get ready, hold your horses, put your feet in, anchor your feet in. We're going to be here for the long haul. He's thinking, don't have sex. Okay. Yeah. Even if you're married.
Yeah. And if you're a slave, don't worry about it. Yeah.
Yes. Do not just obey your master, take those beatings, do what you're I'm real, because it's all going to be redeemed soon. Don't worry. It's all over soon. And even in Paul's letter, I mean, you go into all of these different pericope that I think is really, I've read them 1,000 times because these are issues that I had to go through when I was leaving Christianity. But you go in and not only are you documenting all of the various figures that have, in recent American history, from Charles Taze Russell, you go into William Branham, Pentecostal faith healer, Pat Robertson, of course, we mentioned him earlier, Harold Camping. We talk about some of these people and how Lindsay's, late great planet Earth. But in Romans and Acts and Jude and 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy and practically every book of the New Testament is literally, there's a thread of this that runs through it all. Even if it's trying to eschatological or try to defang the absolute fervent soon near coming of Jesus, it still has to address it. It's like that same statement where it was like, Jesus says, some of you standing here will not taste death till you see the Son coming in his kingdom with the angels of God to repay each man of their deeds, et cetera, which is the Matthew version. But even then, John, in the end of that gospel, a lot of scholars think the last chapter was added to address this problem. And he's like, what about him? Peter says, after Jesus says, you're going to go to Rome, you're going to die. It's not going to be good for you, buddy, but this is what you're called to do. What about that guy? And he goes, well, Jesus says, and it's so funny how they played this one out.
I know.
He says, well, what if it be my will that he remains until I come, the second coming? You focus on you, Peter. And then this rumor spreads through the church, according to this author, whoever this person is writing this text.
Right.
He said that he would not die. And then he goes, Jesus did not say that he would not die. He said, I mean, what if it is my will? Like Jesus wasn't sure, you know, get out of here. It's obvious.
Yeah. It's this, it's like the hurricane could be from Satan. The hurricane can be from God. It just depends on what you need it to be.
Right.
And it's all this ducking and weaving and hedging and what have you. And it's, I get into that in even more detail in the section on the resurrection, where it's just like,
I want to ask you about that. Can I ask you something?
I mean, it's just this catastrophe, this narrative catastrophe of, to use an expression, biblical proportions.
I got to ask you about that resurrection thing. Help me out here. I've thought about this too.
I can't raise me from the dead. If that's what you're going to ask, I'm sorry.
No, I'm trying.
Okay.
I want to get your thoughts on this, because I've thought about this when I've written an article on minimal reasons of doubting. You know how the minimal facts argument comes from apologists?
Yes, right.
I wrote an article, the minimal doubts argument. My whole goal is to cast doubt, to get people to think why we should doubt this. Right. And I did a video recently. I launched on it. I'll send it to you afterwards if you want to check it out.
Sure.
I'm pretty proud of it. The idea is this. We know that it failed. Like, the evidence is pointing that it failed, and it even shows how they're trying to fix the blunder. And Christianity has to change. If it didn't change, it had to like defang it. Like you talk about, the Orthodox Church doesn't really want to talk about it, but it's there, but they don't really, it's the ugly stepchild that they don't want to talk. It's like, it's one of those issues. And my question is this: with the second coming and all these predictions and apocalypticism, Jesus gets resurrected. He's the only person. We don't see any Jewish precedents for an individual being resurrected from the dead. So this idea that Jesus rose from the dead and he's going to come back, if the failure is the case, that it didn't happen and he's not coming back, then we should really be questioning if he even rose from the dead at all, because the people who are making the claims that he rose from the dead are also wrong about the second coming. What do you think's going on? Yeah, it's like, you're wrong about that, but you're right about the resurrection. When Jesus and Paul says, like, our faith, if he did not rise, we are in vain. It's all like, well, you can't even get the coming and when he's coming back. So why should we believe he rose from the dead? What's going on with the resurrection and this apocalypticism? Do you see any overlap in its connection to the second coming? And I don't know. How would you want to phrase that?
Well, assuming that Jesus was historical, which, as you know, is now actually been questioned.
Right.
A guy, what was his last name? His last name was Martinez. He wrote an article in the professional literature about Jesus eating the Last Supper and saying, I will celebrate this with you, in the kingdom. And his take on it was that Jesus expected the kingdom to appear because something, okay? And I take this up in another venue, this thing that many of your listeners are probably familiar with called Jerusalem syndrome. And there are examples of many people, multiple people, all of them religious, who get to Jerusalem and then suddenly they become delusional. And this is a well-known psychiatric situation in Israel. In fact, it was an Israeli psychiatrist that first published on this syndrome. People get there and then suddenly they're convinced that the resurrection is going to happen and it's the end of days and I'm John the Baptist and what have you. And this groundbreaking article describes this delusional kind of frenzy. And when you read it, you're going like, oh, wow, that sounds like Jesus cleansing the temple, breaking furniture, throwing people out, making claims and what have you. And when you read in the Gospels about Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, the throwing down the palm branches, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord, King of, David, the son of David, blah, 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 blah. So Martinez argued that Jesus may have actually believed that his going to Jerusalem was going to trigger the end, that it was going to trigger the return of the Davidic kingdom, not the end of the world, and not the end of the age. It was probably that it was going to restore the kingdom of David, and that all the rest of this apocalyptic stuff is kind of added in after that doesn't happen. And the reason I find that particularly intriguing is that the disciples in the Gospels don't appear to expect the resurrection. I mean, and we touched on that before. Well,
yeah.
Why don't they expect the resurrection? These dim-witted women that go to the tomb and find it empty, and they're going like, oh, what happened? And then the angel or whoever has to remind them, oh, don't you remember that when Jesus was here, he told you that he would be raised in 3 days? Because that seems like a big thing to slip your mind. I can maybe imagine that you might forget a dental appointment, but you probably would not forget that the Son of God was going to come back from the dead. And was that today? And that it's like, what? So let's assume that Jesus really thought that he's going to Jerusalem and that whatever happened to Jerusalem was going to somehow pull this magic trigger and the kingdom was going to be restored. And then it didn't happen. And then instead of this, he comes and John, I think it was, tells us that the authorities didn't immediately arrest Jesus because the people thought he was a prophet. And they were afraid that they were going to start some kind of big rebellion at Passover. Mm-hmm. Now, at Passover, the Roman governor came back to Jerusalem at Passover from Caesarea. He didn't live in Jerusalem. No Roman wanted to be living in Jerusalem. He lived in Caesarea. He came back with about 3,000 soldiers at Passover because Passover was, remember, that's when Jews got delivered from a Gentile. And all these Jews came flocking in to Jerusalem, and Josephus tells us they came armed. They came with weapons because they were having to travel on roads that were unsafe. So when these people came to Jerusalem, they were already carrying knives and what have you. Okay, so let's assume that was true, that Jesus came in here with a big crowd, stirred people up, got everybody all hot under the collar because they thought the kingdom was about to appear. And then instead, rats, Jesus gets arrested and executed. And The end of that. And maybe that's why the disciples weren't expecting a resurrection, because they thought, oh, well, that didn't work out.
So it's a post hoc
Yes,
rationalization.
exactly. And then Paul comes along, and I believe that there are current writers who think Paul never really had much interest in the quote unquote historical Jesus, because to him Jesus was pre-existent. He came down from heaven, did his thing, and then he's going to come back from heaven and finish it. So that's why Paul doesn't mention the virgin birth. He doesn't mention miracles. He says basically nothing about, the Sermon on the Mount, all that happy stuff. He doesn't say anything about resurrection of Lazarus and walking on the sea and everything else, because that doesn't matter to him. That wasn't the Jesus he's interested in. The Jesus he was interested in was a pre-existent angelic being, for all we know. But like I said already, what we have of Paul's writing is this tiny little keyhole that we're trying to visualize his theology through. And that's true of all of Christianity, for that matter.
I recently, well, not too recent, but 6 months ago, was in at Dell Allison Jr.'s house, and he's written quite a few books about this. He's in the vein of Schweitzer as well. We talk about how there's this fossil, and I do think there was probably a guy at the basis of this, but there's good reasons to question and doubt and be like, what? But when I look at Matthew, Jesus says, and I wonder if this really does go back to Jesus, because how often has Jesus said, and it's evident that like this is the author trying to tell you Jesus said, but really the author's saying to you, Jesus said, he says that you will not have gone through all the houses in Israel before the Son of Man comes, right? And I think he's talking about the Son of Man in Daniel, not himself. But this is why I think this is a fossil, because here, according to Paula Fredrickson, you get to Paul, we're late in the game.
Right.
The end didn't happen. And Paul's like going, okay, well, shoot, we already went to the Jews. That didn't work. Now how do we fulfill this thing? And he's looking to his scriptures, and he sees these prophecies of like the ethne, the goyim, the nations will in the end come and like flock in to the God, come into Israel and say, hey, teach us your ways. And Paul is on this mission. The whole reason he is on the mission, the foundation of Christianity, which is a goyim message, it's like it has become a Gentile religion. The whole foundation is apocalyptic. Paul, his only reason to go to Gentiles, according to what I'm trying to say here, is because this will wrap up the end. It's like the same reason of why would we want to establish the Israel state, in the Middle East. This was so that the second coming, there are many presidents who are harping this message saying, if we can establish this, we will cause Christ to come back, because this is part of fulfilling scripture.
Right. Yeah. And it's like the far right, the Christian right, is just rabid about Israel, about supporting Israel, about moving the embassies to Jerusalem. About Jews, not so much. But about Israel, I've got to support Israel. And it is a back formation. Is the way that they think that they're going to trigger the second coming.
I think
and they've got Jerusalem syndrome themselves. I mean, it's just this thing. And it's fascinating to read the literature on this, because there are a number of articles and discussions of it that have been published. And I would encourage your listeners, just go on and Google Jerusalem syndrome, and you're thinking, oh, wow. And
can you send me that article afterwards, by the way? Just
sure. I will find it
in the description.
I'll find it and email it to you. Email you the link. There's actually, I think, a similar syndrome that's been identified for Paris, and I don't remember what was it called, but anyway, apparently some people get into historically famous locations and then they have this like a flashback as if they were there in a previous life or something, and it triggers them. And I was like, okay, sure, why not? I mean, there are so many things that people do that are crazy. Of course, that could be one of them. You know, that's why I stay away from those places.
You don't want to go crazy.
I don't. I ain't crazier than I am already. Crying out loud,
right? Thank you so much for that answer. The Mythic Life, Kristen Whitaker Hood. Thank you for the super chat. In Milwaukee, the diocese moved money to a cemetery and declared bankruptcy to avoid paying victims. Catholic judge said cemetery money is protected because people were buried with expectation of resurrection. This matters. Wow.
Donald Trump should get that lawyer. That's all I got to say. Yeah. Well.
Wow.
Yeah. No, that sounds completely plausible. One of the sections of this book, Above the Law, talks about the abuse of children. It was the only part of this book that was not fun to write. But yeah, it talks about particularly the Catholic Church, and now, of course, as many of your listeners are aware, the Southern Baptist Church, the Southern Baptist Convention, I should say, is apparently under federal investigation for hiding decades and decades of sexual predation that they knew about, that they had a list a couple hundred pages long of people who had been credibly accused of sexual predation, and they were basically not reporting it to authorities. Yeah, the Catholic Church is it's almost, under any other circumstance, it would be comical. But they're moving everything around to basically protect finances because they've already been sued over $4 billion that they have paid out in damages. And this is one of the many things. It's like I say, this book is a shotgun. It's, it's like a shot. It's like being shivved in the shower in prison. It's just like, get it done.
That's exactly what this book feels like when I was reading it. Minus the pain.
I have never been shivved in the shower personally. Okay. And I'm sure you haven't either.
That
and
is
if you
how
have,
your
it's,
pin is.
Yeah.
Your pin is like a scalpel, and it really is going in for the cancer. That's how it feels when I'm reading it. And I love that about your style. You have a unique style, and I've read a lot of books. I mean, I read a lot of books, and a lot of them are dry, but they're informative.
Right.
This is not dry, and this is very like you're just cutthroat, very into the what the
snarkastic.
Yeah,
snarkastic.
You go into When Prophecy Fails, a sociology classic. Festinger and his co-authors described the end times cult and drew several conclusions from the study. What if a believer is presented with evidence, unequivocal and undeniable evidence, that his belief is wrong? What will happen? Their study concluded that the person might emerge even more convinced and even show a new fervor about convincing and converting other people to his view. Assuming the believer is a member of a group of convinced persons who can support one another, we would expect the belief to be maintained and the believers to attempt to proselyte or to persuade non-members that the belief is correct.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
counterintuitive. It's
right.
It's highly counterintuitive. You would think, okay, game over. Nope, not game over. And Christianity is maybe the prime example. Exhibit A of that. It didn't happen, and they just come back stronger because there's a group that already believes and they support one another, and that's the key. And it's like that did not happen with Miller in the Seventh-day Adventist example. His immediate followers all turned out to see the return of Jesus, and then when that didn't happen, he moved the date, and they turned out again, and it didn't happen. But then it died because the rest of the Seventh-day Adventists said, okay, this this has gone far enough. And everybody in the general public that was following it was going like, oh, these nuts. So it did not have enough support to keep going. But in the case of Christianity, I mean, try to imagine how many little cults and religions and what have you, where you would go through a city like Rome or Corinth or something, and there was probably a shrine on every corner, and God knows what all these people were doing. And nobody particularly cared. You know, they were in their own little private Idaho and nobody bothered them much. And so the Christians could just keep regrouping, and they could do what apocalyptic believers do now, is that when something doesn't happen, they just readjust. They come up with something brilliant like dispensationalism. And then when that doesn't work out, they try preteritism or whatever. Yeah, I can. And they just keep adjusting, but they don't let go of it.
I was thinking that, yeah.
Yeah, they don't let go. And that's the thing about the counter apologetics group that I like. We have one flaw. We have this idea that if you just explain it to these people, then they'll understand. If you just show them the evidence, because at heart, they're reasonable people. I mean, come on, they raise children, they hold down a job. You know, some of them are teachers, and God forbid, some of them are policemen. You know, some of these people, you know, they have college degrees. They're trained. Some of them are billionaires. Surely, if we just explain it to them, because, you know, knowledge is power, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, no, yeah, that works on the margins. That peels away some of it. But no, you know, if that were true, then you could explain religion away, period. You know, if it came down to, here's the evidence, here's what actually happens, just think about it, then religion would be gone. Basically, there wouldn't be any religion anywhere. But, and it gets back, like John says in this foreword, it gets back to basic human psychology, and it gets back ultimately to the way the brain has evolved to process things.
Yeah, he uses the term psychopathology has discovered overwhelming conclusive evidence that radical disconfirmation often has little effect on cult members, but it gets into this. You're right. So let me ask you this. Michael Shermer also, I love his book, The Believing Brain, and all his work he's doing.
Yeah.
Great. You also mentioned psychologist Gregory W. Lester explains, because senses and beliefs are both tools for survival and they've evolved to augment one another, our brain considers them to be separate but equally important purveyors of survival information. This means that beliefs are designed to operate independently of sensory data. In fact, the whole survival value of beliefs is based on their ability to persist in the face of contradictory evidence. Beliefs are not supposed to change easily or simply in response to disconfirming evidence. So we are meant to, we're built to not be able to just conform to the evidence. It's like you said, counterintuitive. You mentioned belief in belief, and I want to get to the basic, like we can pick on this all day because it's really, we're pointing the facts out. We're giving you the evidence, the viewer. We're laying it out there, and it is right in front of your eyes. We may not have all the details perfectly right. We may be mistaken about things here and there throughout this episode, but I want to make a point. I say that because who knows? I mean, we don't really know. There's really horrible info. The evidence isn't great. Okay, so we're just making guesswork of a lot of this. But my question is, what can we do if we are up against this Goliath of cognitive dissonance, this Goliath of psychology, and we can point out what it is? It's this belief in belief, as you describe, and we see that people double down and this and that. What would you, as someone who's been looking at the problem, you know, where's the cure? What is the solution to this problem?
Well, I got to tell you, I am not what I call a reassurance salesman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good question. I look at the world on a larger scale. For example, every time I click on something online that's talking about climate change, the general message is climate change is way ahead of where the models predicted it would be. And every time I click on some news item about how we're responding to climate change, the message is we're way behind where we should be. Do the math. You know what? Do the math. One thing is way ahead and we're way behind, so there it is. And that's one of the things, this is why I end this book the way that I do. The last sentence in there. If you're going to survive, you got to get religion out of it. You have to stop thinking religiously. This country has 4% of the world population. And we are one of the very leaders in terms of mortality from COVID. This is the country where the vaccine was invented. Vaccines, actually. And we, it is estimated, have at least 317,000 excess deaths due to COVID that were totally preventable, or at least, well, yeah, preventable by vaccination. And it was recent. You remember who were the persons who were resisting vaccination? Jesus is the jab. If you have Jesus, you're fine. And I have seen people die in hospitals. And the families turn around and go like, what? Get vaccinated? Hell no. We're Christians. We don't need no stinking vaccination.
We're covered by the blood.
Yep. We're covered by the blood of the Lamb. Yeah. And I think, okay, just if you're comparing, if you're keeping score, 317,000 excess deaths is about 1,000 9/11s. Oh, you thought Muslim extremists were the big danger. We're going to kill a bunch of people. Yeah, well, they did. But I got news for you. The real extremists are living right down the street. And they're not only dying themselves, they're going around spreading this virus, and they will spread the next virus that comes along because we're getting these zoonotic diseases jumping out of the animal population into humanity like crazy anymore. Bird flu, swine flu, HIV from monkeys. Yeah, one of these highly infectious pulmonary diseases actually jumped out of the Middle East. It got into humans from camels. I'm like, wow, okay, I did not see that coming. Camels? I guess that's camels getting back at us for having to carry our crap across the desert for, thousands of years. They said, you wait. You just wait. You'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look at this and I think, no, it does not have an easy answer, and the consequences are, severe. While we're on that subject, John Loftus, God love him, he came up with this term, psychic epistemology, because we were talking about these guys, these evangelicals get pushed to the wall. They want to claim that their belief is based on evidence. But if you push them up against the wall, you lean on them, it's actually the Holy Spirit. They have the witness of the Holy Spirit in their heart, and that's how they really know. And so Loftus said, "Oh, it's psychic epistemology." So we just like, "Oh, wait a minute, the Holy Spirit. Oh, the Spirit says." And I'm like, "Damn you, John! I was the one that should have come up with that because that's perfect psychic epistemology." And he beat me to it. I was like, "Gosh." Who's snarkastic here, me or you? Come on, I should have come up with that by all. If it's unfair, okay, it's just unfair.
It's just not right, John. You take
it's
everything.
It's just not
first.
Right. Yeah, he got the jewel of the crown, psychic epistemology. I'm going, okay, I'm stealing it. Okay,
right? Or you
I
could
didn't discover it.
Listen, we could do like Christian apologist, and you could say, "I had it first."
Yes.
And then John copied me.
He copied me. That I should have thought of that. I should have thought of that. Yeah. I thought of that years ago, but I just didn't say anything.
Yeah. Well, we should start making it happen. We still got time. We still got time.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of that. There's some powerful things you said there, and yeah, it's kind of I don't want to be pessimistic, but I just hope that more. I think now we're in an internet age to a point where all of this information can be kind of shouted from. I feel like if I were to give my jab at possibly trying to give a solution here, is just, we talk about explaining it, and that will help get rid of some of it.
Yes.
And we hope with the next generation, we teach them young and give them a lot of this information to mow over and chew on. And the hope is, they say the dinosaurs have to go extinct. Is the older generation. It's like even within scholarship, a lot of the scholars I talk to, they say, a lot of these ideas won't change until the old generation passes.
Right.
Because
Yes, exactly.
They're kind of protecting this information from really going in a direction. It's sad, but it is what it is. And it almost becomes like the next generation is going to be the one carrying the torch. Real quick, we have a super chat here. Soul Rebel AZ left high demand GRP this year, told mom and sis what I found out. Both are stronger in faith. Study more, preach more. What Mr. Connor says, true. Thanks, Derek. This channel has helped so much in my deconstruction. Wow.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. We're glad we could help.
Absolutely. Thank you for that support and the compliment.
Yeah.
Wow.
But there is that tendency to double down.
I did it when I heard things. I doubled down, and then it was time where I would have to really think about it. It wasn't like I reacted stronger, and then when I had time where I wasn't pressured, I didn't feel like you were on my case, and I thought about it. And I was like, my pride, I have to be right. I had to somehow try to get that out of the way, and sure enough, that's what I did. If I could read the last sentence of the book, just to get back on our topic of the book, get the book if you haven't. You got 450 people watching right now. And if you don't get this book, you're not getting raptured in next week when he comes back.
That's right. It's
any society that hopes for sanity in its public life, for the freedom of its members, or for the ability to address crises with real solutions rather than thoughts and prayers will remove religion from education, from healthcare, from the judiciary, I can barely pronounce it, and from public policy generally. I want to ask you this. I just wanted to quote that for people who are watching this. The rising sun, you get into the resurrection in that chapter, but Jesus' family values. And then you go into the skeptics, Panarion. Is that how you pronounce it?
Panarion, yes.
Can you tell us what each of these chapters not the resurrection one, you already went over this one, but going into Jesus' family values and the skeptics, Panarion.
The Jesus family values takes you to some places in the New Testament, particularly Jesus' recommendation that if you can cut your nads off, you should do that for the kingdom of heaven. He's already said, if your eye causes you to stumble, tear your eye out, cut off your hand, cut off your foot. You think, okay, That's far enough. Nope, nope. You should also amputate those nasty testicles, and you should become a eunuch. And as I point out, traditional Christian scholarship is kind of like, oh dear, woo, that's too much. And they haven't really looked at it very much because, like you say, they would rather overlook it. But recent study on it has shown that by the 4th century, yeah, there were significant numbers of Christians that were castrating themselves. And apparently, even in the 2nd century, there have always been Christians who were seeking to have those bothersome testicles removed. In Russia, there was actually a sect that was outlawed under communism where men who converted were castrated. And if they went to a higher degree of religious belief, they were emasculated as well. And women had their breasts amputated. Say what you want about the Soviet Union, they stopped that crap. This also talks about slavery that was ubiquitous in the Roman Empire. And there's no way that Christians could not have known that. And it goes into some recent work on slavery and how Christians did not defeat slavery. In fact, they accepted it completely. And even though France and England were moving toward abolishing slavery before the United States did, you know the first country that actually abolished slavery? No, Haiti. As soon as they gained independence, Haiti abolished slavery. Why did they do that? Because of the New Testament? Nope. It was because most of them had been slaves. The morality of it was not in question. They didn't make any excuses. They didn't say, obey your master as you would Christ. They'd already obeyed actual masters. They had already tasted from that cup.
Damn.
Yeah, Haiti, this little country in the Caribbean, said, enough of that bullshit. But Christians were fine with it in the New Testament, and Christians were fine with it. Slave trading and making money off of it. The British Crown, that's kind of why a lot of Central African countries were a little, about the death of the monarch, because they thought, there's more than just pomp and circumstance and royalty and castles and palaces and stuff behind monarchy, whether it's anywhere in Europe, French monarchy, English monarchy, Scandinavian monarchy, is whatever. Yeah, they've been there. They were on the pointed end of that stick. And then the other thing about the Panarian was a treatise written by a guy named Epiphanius, and he lists 80 heresies, 60 of which were Christian heresies of his own day. And in the Panarian basically is from a Latin word meaning breadbasket. Okay, whatever. You call it whatever you want to, Epiphanius. But he advertised it or wrote it as a remedy chest, a medicine chest, you might say, of remedies for bad ways of thinking. And so I thought, I'll take that. I'll take that idea and I'll say, this is the skeptic's Panarian. And I quote a number of well-known skeptics in there. John Loftus, one of them. And bring it down to where it is a straightforward, relatively simple remedy to apply. You just rub this in. Like Christopher Hitchens' razor, what can be asserted without evidence can be denied without evidence. Don't turn this around and tell me that I have to prove that it's not true. don't tell me it's my responsibility to prove the resurrection didn't happen. It's actually, you're the one making a claim. You prove it.
Right. Right. There's
Yeah.
so
If you,
much.
yeah. I mean, and it's really very simple. It's very easy. It's just basic logic. The person who makes the claim has the responsibility to support the claim.
And what do they have? The
Yeah.
Bible.
And,
The Bible tells me so. The Bible.
right.
So,
Yeah.
or letters from somebody who said that oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
saw Jesus, and really weird
Yeah.
accounts about that. But a
Yeah.
couple of super chats here. Aaron, thank you for that super chat. Derek, doubt whether you've been a faithful Christian since you're still having two hands and two eyes. Just kidding. Weird book. You know, this is I'm gonna give
And
some
we're not
honest-
going to even go into that other part.
no, the other part I'm not. Listen, I'm not a true Christian then. See,
I should hope. I should hope.
this was a struggle of mine for many, many years. I went down to youth in high school. I'm going through puberty, right? I can laugh about it now, and it's like, how stupid! I didn't even realize this is normal and natural, and it's just
Yeah.
that's the point. They want you to be against what comes normal,
Yes.
what is completely
Yes.
human to be. They want you to hate this flesh and this body
Yes.
of death, and you got to hate this. If you want, what does it say? What does a man gain the whole world? A
Yeah. Lose his soul. Yeah.
lose his soul. So this is a serious matter, and I'd go down there and get prayed for almost every other day. And the reason I didn't go every day, this is honest facts. The reason I didn't go I'll say not every single day, but almost every day, is because I was embarrassed to go down the next day, because that afternoon I went home, I saw some pornography or something. And then, and here's the thing, the leaders that were in this Christian group, I talked to my wife about this later. My wife's like, Derek, you were too honest. My whole family, we had a conversation. They're like, you're not supposed to be that honest. And I would go down there, and these leaders weren't getting their hands laid on and prayed over about demons and lust and the spirit of lust and masturbation and this and that. And I'd be like, they must be like, cured or something from.
They've crucified the flesh along with its desires, right?
So why am I struggling? I have God's spirit, and I'd go down there almost every other day, and they go, "Here's Derek again."
Derek,
because I was really trying to fight against this thing, and now I look back and I go, they were all doing it, but they weren't saying anything. And I'm the idiot walking down for 2 years at Trojans for Christ, at Pine Forest High School in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Yes, I gave you the whole dang shebang. That was the high school I went to. And I'm like asking them to cast out the demons, and their hands are dirty from the night before. And they're laying their hands on me. I mean, I can't imagine they weren't.
It's like I told you, dude. Knowledge is power, but so is ignorance. But the fact that they were keeping you in the dark was keeping them in power.
Well put. Yeah. Aaron, thank you for that. Next one's from Martin. Thank you, Martin, for the super chat. $5 if you had an accurate time machine. What year, day, and time would you punch in to confirm Jesus?
Oh, ouch.
What year?
I'd have to go back to Bethlehem, and then I'd probably not be able to find a room. And end up sleeping overnight in a manger or something. Yeah. That would be kind of a long shot anyway, because the authorities on the New Testament don't know what year Jesus was born in, and don't know for sure what year he died in. So you would have to pack a big bag to go back there. We're assuming Jesus was crucified somewhere around the year 30, give or take, 2,
Right.
3, 5, whatever years. And that just brings up how little we know about this. The first person that mentions Jesus historically is Paul of Tarsus, and Paul of Tarsus never met Jesus, apparently. Right. Never saw the guy. And he's the first person to meet him. Then the gospel writers come along a generation after Paul. Where did they get their information? The typical traditional answer to that from Bible scholars, quote unquote, is that it was an oral tradition. Well, hey, you know how oral traditions work. And that was even, that was before Facebook.
Yeah.
So who's passing this around to who? If you can see the progression of theology right in the Gospels. To Paul, Jesus becomes the Christ at the moment of his resurrection.
I love that you get into this, but in your book, but go ahead.
Yeah. And to Luke, he's the Christ at the moment of his conception. He's the Messiah. To Mark, he's not the Messiah until he's baptized. So how many times did this guy become the Messiah? And then to John, he didn't even worry about that because Jesus has existed forever. He was there at creation.
I thought of a funny thing, just painting this picture. When I was a Christian and I'd struggle for a long period of relapse or, fall away for a while and then come back, I probably was born again 100 times in my life. I mean, like, really, I was so trying to figure out how this works. And long story short, I'm wondering if Jesus, I'm joking around, I could imagine a diatessaron being written about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jesus was born the Son of God, but he lost that memory and he kind of fell away from being the Son of God. But then he got baptized. He became the Son of God. But then he kind of lost his touch. And then, he got killed and he rose again from the dead and became Son of God. And sure enough, we discovered after the fact, he was Son of God forever. Did you know that? It's funny how that all works.
Yeah. And it's just like anything that casts doubt can be explained, and anything that makes sense proves it. But no matter which way you go, it's all proved. It's proven. Yeah.
Robert,
and then if push comes to shove and none of that works, then you get the Holy Ghost. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then you got this psychic epistemology again. It's like, I don't need any evidence, which is what a lot of these guys say.
Or the Bible's enough evidence to them. Somehow.
You don't need evidence. And apologists will tell you it wouldn't matter if archaeology disconfirmed every single thing in the Gospels. I would still believe it because I don't need evidence at the end of the day. So then you come back and you're going, why are you pretending that there's evidence if you don't need it? And some theologians have said right from the beginning, it's not evidential. There is no evidential Christology. You don't need it. You never needed it. The church has the witness of faith, period. End of story. You either believe it or you don't.
And I know that not all Christians would say that, or especially not in light of our discussion. But I think there are a lot that would, exactly like you said. And an interesting thing is like, this is why I think apologetics is going out of its way, bending over backwards to try and make the Gospels eyewitness, actual historical, they mentioned a real place. They know about these baths that the angels would stir up that would heal people. Like, they know about things. And therefore, because we know there's certain places or certain people that really existed that really did some of this stuff, this proves the claims of Christianity in their mind, and it just helps them with their psychic epistemology, I would say. Coupled with the psychic epistemology, they're validating that psychic epistemology any way they can rather than disconfirming it and finding evidence against this or problems with it. And I actually did a recent response to William Lane Craig where I was picking apart his Holy Ghost thing. Mm-hmm. And I asked him a super chat on Capturing Christianity. It's a big Christian apologist YouTube channel. And I said, I said, what do you do about the Mormons? Like, you say it's the Holy Spirit. They have this experience. And he goes, they have defeaters. And then he said something really careful, Robert, I thought about after I made the video response. Really careful. He said, we don't have defeaters for the Holy Spirit in Christianity. And I thought to myself, when I did the response video, let me show you defeaters for Christianity in the text of the New Testament. Let me give you some defeaters. But I thought about what he said, and I said, that was a kind of either he purposely said that, or there was like a sleight of hand here where he's trying to say, we don't have a defeater for the Holy Spirit. How can I falsify the invisible dragon in your garage?
Exactly. Yes.
And then when I go, I've got a heat reader that should be able to pick up some heat. Well, it's not detectable by heat. Okay, well then it should be some, every single observable, testable thing, it becomes unfalsifiable.
Right. Exactly.
It was
It's
tricky.
unfalsifiable, and therefore any attempt to falsify it is probably not going to work. Not necessarily doomed to failure, but it's not going to work because it's belief in belief. That's all I can tell you. If you believe it, you're there. You're there.
I love that. I'm going to coin the phrase. From now on, I'm going to start mentioning the belief in belief. And we got to coin this phrase. Remember, Robert Connor brought it up. The Jesus Cult. Make sure you get a copy. Look, Ricky Johnson sent a super chat. Thank you, Ricky. Really looking forward to reading Robert's book. It's not a thick book. It's an easy read, and it's super fun. So I hope you'll get it. Making sure I didn't miss anybody. Oh, we got another one here. Logan Fisher in the house. Did Jesus think he equals Prince of the Third Temple?
No idea. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. Paul wasn't there, and the gospel writers who are anonymous, they weren't there either. So
that's true.
What did Jesus think? I wish I knew, but I mean, it's all, and I have actually said seriously that there are no experts on early Christianity. It's like looking through a keyhole at somebody inside somebody's house and trying to see everything that's in there through a keyhole, because that's what we have. Almost none of the gospels that were originally out there have survived. The gospels that we have, as John Loftus points out, those things are copied and recopied, and the first complete Bibles that we have, as we understand that, are from the 4th century. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the time of their discovery, it was like, whoa, Codex Sinaiticus, oh my goodness, a whole Bible? And we don't know what their sources were.
Bart Ehrman goes into this. Bart
Ehrman exactly. Bart Ehrman is another person who,
Another interesting thing that you brought up about the whole, he becomes Son of God at this point, that point, mm-hmm. this point, baptism, resurrection, pre-existent, birth, the whole nine. Bart points out in his How Jesus Became God book, and not, his was it the Great Courses? He goes through the lecture series, and I'm sure it's in his book on How Jesus Became God. He points out that the earliest Christology that we have recorded is this one in Romans 1, 3, and 4, which is once Jesus dies and then resurrects, then he is the Son of God, right? Yes. That's the earliest one we have. Now, what's interesting about this idea is it becomes heretical. There are Christians in the late 2nd going into the 3rd century who are debating this issue, and they believe that he became Son of God at resurrection. They became heretics.
Yes.
So the earliest that we have recorded version of Christology for Christians that Paul is using to approach the Roman church becomes heretical.
Yes.
You have to believe it's pre-existent, it's this, it's that. You have to believe all the package of Christology in order for it not to be. So it was really interesting hearing Bart go into that. It blew my mind.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I think it's 2nd John. That brief letter mentions those who deny that Jesus came in the flesh. And you read that, and you go like, whoa, wait a minute. There were Christians who denied that Jesus came in the flesh. And then eventually you find out, oh yeah, actually there were. They believed that Jesus materialized this body that could be seen. But an Origen, who writes, I don't know, what is it, 2nd century?
Contra Kelsum, 3rd century.
Yeah. So Origen mentions, or Celsus mentioned, and Origen quotes him, that there were Christians who not only denied the resurrection according to Scripture, but there were Christians who believed that Jesus was a spirit, and that when people saw him, they saw different things depending on who they were.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, and let me bring up the thing about Porphyry and Celsus. Why don't we have their books? Because Christians burned them. And the only way that we know, the only reason we know anything about what these guys wrote is because somebody else wrote a quote unquote refutation and quoted them partially and tendentiously and quoted the parts they thought they could refute. And the church in the 4th and 5th centuries hunted down all the copies of all this stuff and burned them, made sure they were burned, made sure they were destroyed so they didn't get out there. Like I said, ignorance is power.
What do you think about this show today, ladies and gentlemen? I hope you've been having a blast. 471 people watching. The Jesus Cult 2,000 Years of the Last Days. I hope you'll get you a copy. Check it out. It's fun. You will not be let down. It's a fun read from start to finish. And let's see some people get it. It is in the description. You can click the Amazon link down there as well, or you could just go to Amazon.com, type in Robert Connor or the Jesus Cult 2,000 Years of the Last Days. You'll find the book. I want to give a quick shout out. I did share this to my Patreon. I try to keep connected to the Patreon members, letting them know when I have stuff coming up. Did that one with John J. Collins 2 days ago. Jesus was wrong, and Jesus had to say, hey, what the heck? The Gospels are stories. Christian apologists saying to turn off skeptics like me and other people in terms of like first get your understanding of Christianity, Christians. Why are you watching my videos? Don't you know you need to make sure you firmly understand Christianity and believe it at least in some way, shape, or form so that you're not getting tricked by people like me. The illusion of God. I mean, like there's so much stuff. I've been sharing it here, and I've got a lot of interviews coming up that I'm going to be launching early that I did with Paula Fredrickson. She has never, by the way, Robert, done any interviews with anyone that was not either the news or within like a college institution where she was giving lectures.
Right.
So I've been privileged to do something that is not out there.
She doesn't want to put up with,
the insanity that goes on out there.
The insanity. Thank you, Paula. I understand completely.
Well, I went through like multiple security clearances. And I mean, like AJ Levine had my back. I had other academics email. Like there was so much involved. And I traveled all the way to Boston, flying from Washington State. Sat down with her for 4 or 5 hours, recorded, I think, 14, 15 different episodes with her. And I'm going to be chipping away, editing those, getting them on a Patreon as soon as possible. So people can support us there. There's a bunch of courses too by Bart Ehrman. We got one coming up on finding Moses. And of course he's critical. So he's like, what does the evidence look like? And can we be confident at all this guy exists, the whole nine? So you're going to hear a scholar going into that soon. We do have a super chat here before we go. Forget the J cult and join us at the Church of the Flying Man. Way cooler than Christianity and no self-castration required. Myron, bless you, Derek. Thank you, YouTube punk. I thank you. Thank you. The cult of MythVision nods their head toward you. Thank you. That's
right. That's right.
I really appreciate that. Any final words from you?
Namaste. Now, one spoiler, there is a part here on the Tuam child and baby home in this book. I don't know if you're up to that part yet, but no, that's not a fun read. Okay. And the Indian industrial schools in Canada that you may have been reading about lately in the news, where they're finding shallow graves, unmarked graves full of kids. Not a fun thing either. Those were all religious schools, by the way. Yeah. They were supported by the governments of Canada and Ireland at the time, but they were administered by mostly Roman Catholic orders. Yeah. So that part is a little bit, don't read that part right after you've had breakfast, okay? Just FYI.
Wow.
Yeah. Content warning.
Well, I'll let people know if you like what you hear. I mean, go get the book. Obviously be cautious, tiptoeing into some of that, but either way, I think it's worthy of educating ourselves and learning what Robert says in the book here. If you have any challenges, right, read the book and then write, challenges or
Yeah.
bring them up, right? But drop a review on Amazon too, letting others know about the book, what you thought about it. And, let me know. I like to hear that you bought the book. Email me, let me know what you thought about it. That's the kind of stuff when I'm promoting the books of the academics and others that I interview, it makes me feel good to know that people are getting them. Number one, that way these scholars want to come back, but also so that I know that you're actually learning the content that's in them. It is a journey I hope you're taking with me, and not just, some people don't have the time, and I get it, but I hope you're taking the journey along with me and as much as you possibly can to learn these things. Check out his books, join our Patreon. Robert?
On the About the Author page, there is a contact email.
Oh, that is right. I was going to ask you, like, you're one of the few people I know who actually put that out there.
Yeah, I know. I don't, like I said before we started this, I'm not on social media. I don't want to be on social media. I don't like social media, or as I call it, anti-social media. And a lot of the authors who are on social media get this constant drumbeat of whack jobs and ignoramuses and trolls and what have you. And I just don't mess with it. But I figure, look, if somebody wants to send an email, I can delete it.
Yeah.
Or I can read it and I can say, oh, okay, this person has got a point. This person is genuinely interested in what the book says. Wants further information, whatever. Sure. Yeah. What was the thing that I was supposed to email you about?
About the Jerusalem syndrome article.
Jerusalem. Yeah. That's what I thought, but I wanted to be sure. Okay. Jerusalem syndrome.
And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to wait for Jesus. MythVision has already come, and we are out. Thank you so much, Robert, for this time of yours. I look forward to your next book and our next discussion.
Cool. Cool. Take care.
Have a good one, you too. And never forget, we are MythVision.